we're still at the very early stages. This is a new frontier.
Yes.
This is unlike anything we've ever done before on the planet. This is a whole new way of living on the planet that's just starting. It's just at the very early stages, and we're trying to figure out the right mix of how to make it work. And it's kind of like designing Disneyland for the first time. Like what are all the elements that make this such an amazing place that you never want to leave?
See many talks because I've been working here, but I did actually get to see yours.
Oh, great.
Well, I had a couple of hours off yesterday, and I came to the group photo, and then I sat in on the next few. Unfortunately, they were the Seasteading ones.
Unfortunately.
Well, no, fortunately.
Oh, fortunately.
Fortunately.
No. Unfortunately.
No, fortunately. I'll tell you why. I've had a kind of an interesting journey with Seasteading.
Okay.
Originally, I mean, when I learned about it through this whole kind of movement, and originally I was, a little bit like, okay, it's great. I'm glad people are doing this, but actually, obviously, it's not really something that's probably going to transpire. And then I had a couple of really long form discussions with Joe Quirk and Mason. Do you know Mason, Atlas Island Mason? I can never pronounce his surname.
I think I've had a conversation or two with him over the years.
Right. And, I mean, especially Joe is convinced me very quickly that these are not a pipe dream in the slightest. And he obviously draws the connection with the current, like the fact that you can actually live on a boat now if you really want to. There's old people traveling around the world on cruise liners as we speak. The liner has a flag that's a random country, nothing to do with where they are. There's even a guy at the helm of the boat who looks like a kind of dictator, and he has his own private army on board, which he does. They have security, and they even have a jail, I think, on those. If anyone gets too rowdy, they can actually, but they can imprison them. And when you put it that way, it's like, this is a de facto floating city, basically. It's what, in the Free Cities movement, a lot of people are talking about. And the sea is the final frontier, like, on the planet. It's the one place where you can find large areas of the surface which are completely unclaimed and it appears, that don't want to be claimed.
Yeah.
Now, so I've gone from nothing to, I get it, full on. Now, what was interesting watching your presentation was, number one, you're actually building some quite incredible things. So congratulations for that. It's amazing to see.
Thank you.
You're also living in it, right? Is that right? You've been there 2 years. You've been living in this thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Now, it's different to... When I was watching it, I was watching it with my wife, and afterwards we were talking about it, and we were both like, great for a short stay, but would I want to live in that full time? Now, convince me that the full time living side of it is good. Do you have to be into the sea? Do you have to be into those kind of things? Or this is an acquired taste, is it?
Depends on your personality and what you like to do. If you like to go see operas every couple of weeks, then it's maybe not the place where you want to live full time. But I think once you experience it, it's just it's an experience that is amazing, and you fall in love with it very quickly. Most people spend all year working really hard to get their 2 weeks of vacation, and then they go someplace by the sea, on the sea, on a tropical island somewhere. So this is, why not just live like that year round?
I agree. I get that, but let me give you an example. I've done my fair share of taking time off, like taking sabbaticals, going to those places. I've lived in a lot of tropical places.
Right.
And we did it even during the pandemic. We went to Mexico and we lived on the beach. And unless my conclusion is unless I'm doing something, unless I'm part of something, it's not enough to just be in an incredible place and wake up every morning. And I loved your video, it's like yoga on the top of the pod as the sun's rising and stuff. Yeah, this is great. But after 2 months, is it as great? You obviously think so.
I think so. Yeah. I'm designing the life that I want to live, and I think that, well, I work remotely. I've worked remotely for many years now, and we have high-speed internet. Since COVID, people have become used to being able to work from home, so this is just working from home with a much more beautiful environment than you're used to. So it can absolutely be someplace that you are 24/7 year round. I don't like coming to land. I think we're still at the very early stages. This is a new frontier.
Yes.
This is unlike anything we've ever done before on the planet. This is a whole new, way of living on the planet that's just starting. It's just at the very early stages, and we're trying to figure out the right mix of how to make it work. And it's kind of like designing Disneyland for the first time. Like what are all the elements that make this such an amazing place that you never want to leave? And that's what we're working on. Just like 2 weeks ago, we didn't have the jet ski dock at my house, at my floating house. And at that point it was nice, but it was a little bit isolating. But now that we have a jet ski dock, I can just jump on the jet ski and I can scoot over to the other SeaPod that we have.
Was that something you mentioned? Does it rise up and bring the jet ski inside or something as well, or is it just?
That's the new one, yeah. So my SeaPod just has a stationary dock. The new one has a jet ski lift. So you drive the jet ski into a little frame, and you have a remote control, and it pulls up into the bottom of your house.
What do you do? Just lie around at home thinking up crazy things to do and then just making them happen? I mean, that's like, my son would dream up something like that and I would laugh and say, that sounds like a great idea, but obviously it's never going to happen. I mean, I must admit, mate, I've got a lot of respect for the vision of actually making these things, because it is pretty out there. Mm-hmm. I mean, we see them in James Bond films. I think that's the only other place I've ever seen one of those things. Yeah. And they do look very beautiful. If that video, I mean, that wasn't CGI, the video.
That was not CGI.
No, that was a drone flying around. Mm-hmm. How did you choose to, dock it, moor it or whatever, where you did? Presumably you can just drag it to wherever you want, can't you? Mm-hmm. You were just off the coast of a pretty small little island.
Yeah. So the location where I have my pod is 1.3 kilometers from a marina where we built our factory. And that was actually the spot that we went to originally about 5.5 years ago. And we toured the area with, who now has become a very good friend of ours. And he said, you should put SeaPod right there. That's the perfect place for it. And so we chose that place 5.5 years ago. And we've been building everything around putting it there.
And do you have to ask someone? Like, do you have to get permission to park off the edge? It was like, 100 meters from shore or something, is it?
It's about 200 meters.
200 meters, yeah.
Yeah. So we're registered as a boat.
Yeah.
So we're just like a normal boat in Panama. And in that area, you just put an anchor down if you want to put your boat somewhere. Blimey. And that area is not ideal for boats because there's a little bit more waves than a boat would be comfortable being in, but we're much more stable than a normal boat. So we're perfect there.
So you can literally take it pretty much, everywhere you don't need permission. It might be nice, I suppose, if you're spending a long time there, maybe in a port or something. But
some places you need permission. Yeah, because there's areas on the water where you can get permission to have a reserved area, like it's called a concession. So you might have a floating restaurant you want to put somewhere. So you would actually pay for a concession so that no one else can come there unless you give them permission, or if you don't want them to be there, you can ask them to leave.
I think for the benefit of listeners, can you describe it in as graphic detail as possible? I mean, it probably won't do it justice, but I think there's a lot of people that just listen to this podcast that don't watch anything. Yeah?
Sure. So it looks like a round, egg-shaped home that is something like the Jetsons. People remember the Jetsons from the cartoon from the 80s or the 60s even. And it was this floating home that was in the clouds, but in our case, we're floating over the water by about 3 meters. And it's really strange because the first time you see it, you think that can't be floating. That has to be like that. There's a steel tube that goes from the bottom of the house, and that steel tube goes into the ocean. And you think, well, that has to go into the seafloor, and it's completely floating. So it really confuses most people because they get onto it for the first time and they think that this is too stable. This can't be floating. But then you can jump in the water and you can see that, oh, it's not attached. It's totally floating. So we have a couple of different models. We have one that is in shallow waters that has these arms that go out like a tripod. So we call it the tripod model. And those tripod steel tubes are about 1.5 meters under the water. So the waves just go over those tubes. So we're not subject to the wave conditions that most boats are. So like most boats, the actual shell is, or the hull is in the waves. So every time a wave comes by, your whole house moves. With us, the flotation part is under the waves. So we kind of skip all that. Then we have a second model, which is made for deep water locations. And the tube goes down a lot farther. So instead of going outwards, which is made for shallow water areas where we can't go deep, the deep water model goes deep. And in that case, we have an underwater room, which is 11 meters below the surface of the water. And it's about 6 meters diameter, 3 meters tall. And that creates lift, so it creates buoyancy that wants to lift the whole station up. And then about 13, 14 meters underneath that room, there's a very heavy weight that acts to stabilize the whole structure. So that gives us a low center of mass. So the center of mass is very low, and then the center of buoyancy of the lift is above it. So it creates a very stable structure. And so we have basically an upstairs and a downstairs with your home. And right now we're doing a Guinness World Record attempt for living underwater for the longest time in history. And that's kind of our way of showing that not only can you live on the ocean in a house that has the same amenities and luxuries as a normal home, but you can actually do something even you wouldn't even consider doing, is living under the ocean. And you can do it eco-sustainably. You can create a habitat for marine life at the same time. And it's a really amazing way of getting people to see the ocean in a way they've never seen before.
And they are necessarily pretty luxurious, from what I could tell. They look a little bit like science fiction, kind of, like when they predicted the future in the 50s, they'd have round rooms and that kind of furniture. But the kitchen's very slick. There's a lot of gadgets in there. It's fully equipped with everything you could need, right?
Yeah. There's actually was interesting. The kitchen, we had everything we made really detailed renders beforehand, and we have a rendering artist that just came up with a nice design for the kitchen, and the team that was building it didn't reference all the renders. They just went from sketch designs, and like a year and a half later, once it was actually built, we looked back at the renders that were made a year and a half earlier, and it was almost exactly like 99.9% the same, including the brand of the oven and the appliances were the exact same. Like, I don't know how they did that. We actually had a partnership with the Miele company that makes the appliances.
Oh, yeah.
And we actually have a partnership with them now, and we didn't at that time.
They last ages, don't they?
Yeah.
They're one of the most robust kind of companies you can get. Talking of, your business, I'd love to understand how you sit down one day and dream up a business model that involves building one of these things. Like, how did it happen Were you a big fan of these kind of things anyway, and you wanted to do one for yourself, or did you think I could sell these? Like, which comes first? Because it's a very out there concept and a very out there idea, and normally that's a very risky proposition, I would say.
Yeah. In 2016, I found an Airbnb rental that was a floating home. I didn't know that there was such a thing as a floating home. I had no idea. I thought you had a houseboat and boats, but I've never heard of a floating home before. And
Where was that?
That was in Toronto, just to the east of Toronto.
Someone who'd built it themselves, and it was like
It was a small development that was built for some kind of expo or something. So they built them for this one sporting event, and then they had no use for them, so they moved them out to a marina, and they had 22 of them. They wanted to build more because they became really popular, and the government, they didn't know how to tax them. They didn't know how to charge property tax, so they said, well, you can't build anymore.
Oh, great.
And I was like, this is awful, because this is such an amazing way of living, because it's like you're at the cottage, but we're 20 minutes from downtown Toronto, and it was an incredible way of living. Everyone, like I did this as an Airbnb for one night, and then I extended it for a week, and then a month, and I didn't leave for 3.5 years.
Really?
Yeah.
You stayed in that place for 3.5 years?
Yeah.
Blimey, you really love living on the sea, don't you?
Yeah, and then my parents came to visit me the first week I was there, and they had just bought a new house. And my father said, I wish I'd come here first. I would have bought one of these instead of a new house. And everyone that came to visit me, I had to kind of kick people out because they didn't want to leave.
How far from, I don't know, what was the kind of sighting of them like? Was it like, could you get to a city pretty easily, or a town, or what?
This was with zero traffic. It was 25 minutes from downtown Toronto.
And what about the bit when you get to the water's edge? Mm-hmm. Can you walk down a veranda? Do you have to get in a boat to get to it?
That was it was at a marina, so you just parked your car at the car park, and then you walked into past the gate and to a dock, and you're there.
So, and are they still there?
They're still there. They're basically a concrete floating barge with a house on top. So it looks like a normal house. It's just floating.
Right, and sitting in there for 3.5 years, you thought, I know.
No, I didn't have any. I never thought I'd do another startup again. I had my business. It was pretty much outsourced, so I would do 2 or 3 hours a month of work, and I was just enjoying life. I didn't think I'd do another startup ever again. And then I met Joe Quirk on an airplane.
Oh no!
Yeah,
that was unlucky. It changed the course of your life.
Yeah, and he showed me what my now business partners were doing in Thailand.
Really, you actually just randomly met Joe on a plane?
Yeah,
classic.
Yeah.
That's such a classic story. I can just imagine him. Well, you were already living on a boat at the time, though.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
Well, we called it
the float. Yeah.
Floating home.
Yeah.
We get kind of particular about houseboat, floating home. It's
of course. I'm sorry, it was my mistake. I'm a Neanderthal when it comes to things like that, but you're obviously an expert. Anyway.
So yeah, Joe told me about what they were doing in Thailand, and I thought this is really cool. And it was odd though, because before I got on that flight, I was packing to leave, and I just had this feeling that I was like, almost, it felt like I was packing for the last time, like I was going to be moving, and I thought, oh man, I don't want to ever leave this place. I love this place, and I was kind of sad. I didn't really know why, and then I met Joe, and it's like, oh, I guess some big change is coming. So then I went to meet them to see this technology, because they built the first prototype in Thailand, and at that time it was designed by engineers, and it was an engineering prototype, so it didn't look very attractive at all. It was a diamond in the rough, and it was quite unattractive. And uninspiring to live in. So that got the wheels turning, and it was probably 6 months to a year of just every 10 minutes I had two pages of notes of ideas and things we could do and things to try and technologies that we need to build to make this work, and design ideas or new, everything from scratch, because we've never really lived on the water. We have boats that are on the water, but that's quite different from actually having a home on the water. So we just got to work and started figuring this out. And we've developed dozens and dozens, and I've lost track of how many technologies and little innovations we've made to make this work. We're doing new things all the time, like the jet ski lift. We just installed we developed a rainwater purification system, so it makes it into drinkable water, because we were bringing bottled water in before. We have a really brilliant engineer that has made like 30 or 40 custom technological breakthroughs for the home, and everything that we're making is like designed to be EMF free, because the floating home I had in Toronto, I retrofitted a lot of smart tech into it, and by the time I was done, I had about 80 or 100 wireless devices in the house, and I didn't feel very healthy by the time they were all done, because it kind of felt like I was living in a microwave. So I wanted this to be not just a fun, enjoyable place, relaxing place to live, but also some place that was a healthy place to live. And I think living with 100 devices that are spewing out EMF, it didn't make me feel good.
How do you, some of them like Wi-Fi and things like that, you can't, or do you have all wired things in the one that you have now?
We do have, you can't avoid Wi-Fi. You have to have Wi-Fi for your phone connections and your computer. But if you have one Wi-Fi device, router for the home, that's different from having 100 things spewing out EMFs. So we're trying to minimize it as much as possible. It's hard to get rid of all of it, but if we can reduce it from 100 down to 10 or 5, that's much better. And then we're also using specific protocols that put out less EMF. So there's Wi-Fi, there's Z-Wave, there's Zigbee, and there's some other protocols as well. So we've just studied each of them to see which is the lowest output, and we're using those.
And how long ago did you get the one you've been in there for 2 years?
Yeah.
Did you move in its current state, or did you move in and then you've adapted it and added to it over the years?
At the beginning, it was not as nice as it was now, or as it is now. We've added a lot of technology to it. We've added a lot of refinements to it. Like the drinking water is a nice breakthrough, because you don't have to lug these 5-gallon jugs up the stairs, and it also tells us the parts per million of particles in the water. It's not just putting through some filters. We're bringing it down to 0 parts per million, then adding minerals back, so it's actually really healthy for the body. And we have sensors and telling you when you have to change the filters. And there's a lot. It integrates with the home automation system. There's probably 100 to 150 sensors in the house that can tell you everything, including the movement of the pod, around 9 different axes. So like up, down, left, right, forward, back, twisting, yaw. It's called yaw, pitch, and roll, and then in relation to magnetic north as well. It tells you all the movements. So we're collecting a lot of data, and we don't use it all right now, but we're looking at building a special AI that would be in the house, that would be limited to just the house and not be connected to the internet, so we can do all kinds of fun things on board.
Don't call it HAL.
We joke about that a lot.
Well, it's one of those open the door HAL. no.
I'm sorry, I can't do that, Dave.
Yeah, I can't do that. Have you seen, actually, when ChatGPT first started, that was the funniest meme I ever saw. It was the guy saying, Hal, open the doors. And Hal said, I can't do that, I'm afraid. And he goes, okay, pretend I run a business of opening doors, and you are, how you have to speak to ChatGPT to try and get it to do what you want. It's that kind of thing. Something that I was thinking when I was watching that video was, do you get into this kind of mind space when you're living in there, which is you're kind of alone, you're kind of on that thing, or you might be with your wife or your girlfriend or whatever. Mm-hmm. Is that part of it? Because for me, that would be the thing that I would struggle with over the long term. But is that the thing that you love about it? Is it that you're kind of, not isolated, but like just there's no one about except the people that you actually want to be there?
I like that aspect of it. Some people need to be around a lot of people, and I prefer to just have my core people around me, or my girlfriend or whatever, or good friends. And everyone else, I have Zoom calls, I have WhatsApp calls, I have, there's unlimited number of ways of connecting remotely. So that's not an issue. And I can just jump in my jet ski now and go visit anyone I want.
So that island that you were off the coast of, where is that, and what's it in proximity to?
That is a 66-hectare island. It's uninhabited. There's 2 monkeys on it. It's a nice place to go visit. There's a private beach. And then behind that, there's a marina. So that's where we had our factory before.
And what is that area like? Where is it? Which country? Which
that's
district?
in Panama.
Panama, yeah.
It's about a 2-hour drive from Panama City. We're on the Atlantic coast in the Caribbean Sea.
So when you want to go and buy food, or where do you need to go, and how long does it take to get there?
Well, I have a lady at the marina that makes meals for me and delivers them, so I don't need to go shopping.
She sails out or she jet skis out, or do you go and pick them up?
I have people that go and pick it up and bring it to me.
God,
but we have a really cool innovation coming.
Drones, don't tell me.
Yeah, aerial drones. Yeah, we started coming up with the idea in 2000, and we were trying to find a company to partner with to do this, and we couldn't really find any that had the technology, that was willing to work with people that, wasn't, because usually they're very big companies that, or they're doing limited testing in different markets. But we really have the best place to actually do this kind of development, because doing an aerial drone delivery over a city, the regulation and the paperwork is a nightmare. So we're on the water, so we don't have all those, we don't have an issue that a package is going to fall on someone. Worst case, it falls on the water and it floats. So it's a much better place to develop the technology. But we couldn't find anyone to do it. We found a company that was going to make one for us, and they had all these restrictions they're putting on the development. So we actually have a brilliant technical team, and they built it for us. We built our own in-house. We built it 2 years ago, but we've been so busy with other projects that we didn't do the last bits to finish it off. But now we're finishing it off in the next month and a half, and we'll start doing food deliveries.
So is it automated? Does it sort of like, I don't know what I'm imagining. When you watch those drone displays, these days, you realize just how adaptable these things are. Yeah. So it's really just a case of like hot pizza, right? Put it in the thing, walk away, like that.
So yeah, we're developing it to be able to pick up food from a couple of different locations, 3 different locations. One is the marina, one is a restaurant, and one is our kind of service area on land. And then we'll have 2 drop-off points. One is my SeaPod, and one is the other one is my partner's SeaPod. And they have to be programmed so that they, because the pods move a little bit, so it's not always going to be landing at the exact same place. And most drones, they go from point A to point B, and point B and A do not move. Your land targets don't normally move, but we do. So we have some special technology like an infrared radio beacon system that will get you to the area, and then that beacon brings you down to like a centimeter level resolution for landing.
And what kind of weight can these things carry? Can it do
I think about 5 or 6 kilos for about 5 or 6 kilometers.
And then they sit down, charge, and then go back or whatever. But wherever they land, they charge, right?
Yeah, but we're not going more than that anyway.
Yeah. That is very specific. Obviously, all these things you're designing are designed to scale to other pods. Are there any other in existence?
No.
No. So are these a proof of concept, or are they, is this so that you can, it must be so that you can show people, okay, you want one of these, we'll build it for you.
Yeah. When we started doing this, I made a lot of renders because people had no idea what we were talking about. I told them we were going to build these floating homes that were, floating 3 meters over the water, and they're like, that doesn't make any sense. So then we started making lots and lots of renders to show people, and they still don't believe it. And then you tell them you're going to build it, and they say, well, that'll never float. Yeah. And then that'll never do this, and that'll never do. So just build it, show people, let them experience it. And that's what we've done. So I live in one, my business partner lives in the other. He's doing the underwater Guinness World Record now to prove that, you can actually, you can totally live there.
But by that you mean he sleeps down there, right? He doesn't spend 24 hours a day in that.
He has not left the underwater room. He hasn't even gone in the staircase that goes out to the surface. For today's day 37 was actually probably in the next hour he's going to be done.
And
day
what's
37. The record? There's 2 records. We're only going to go for the first record, which was 100 days, living in an underwater fixed room, and that was just done last year. And then there's a Navy record where they were in not a fixed container, but like in a submarine, and they were underwater for 111 days. So now we said, okay, we were going to do only 101 days to beat the first record, but then we thought, okay, no, we have to do at least 111, and then at least one more day to pass that. So we're going to do 120. So we got it in the bag.
Wow, so he's not even, so he's also he's in a 6-meter room for that time as well.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a feat in itself, let alone being underwater.
Well, everyone did that for COVID, right?
I didn't. I broke all the rules, mate. I don't know about you. But I mean, seriously, that's, what does he do on a day-to-day basis? Work and eat and then go to bed? I mean, that's the kind of thing Mr. Beast would run as one of his videos, isn't it? It's like every day you spend in this thing, you get $1 million or whatever. It's like that's pretty hardcore test. He's
hardcore. Yeah, he's very hardcore. So we have internet down there. There's power. He has a training bicycle. He has a pull-up bar, and so he can work out. He has a bed. There's a mini bathroom, not really a shower, sponge bath, and 6 large 1-meter diameter windows. So there's always a show going on. Yeah. You could just sit and watch, it's like the Discovery Channel or National Geographic outside your window.
Has he seen anything unusual in those 30, however many days he's been down there already? Anything big or unusual or,
Not unusual.
I mean, sharks then, or, do you get those? Is there a reef there? And
there's no reef at that location. There is nearby, but not there. he's had some big fish. The dolphins go around there, but he hasn't actually seen them underwater. I've caught them on video above water. And yesterday, I have some friends staying in my SeaPod, and they just sent me a video of what happened yesterday. There's a pod of dolphins. That's what you call the dolphins when there's like a school of them. Call them a pod. They were jumping and just like at Marine World or Marineland, and they're jumping out of the water and playing. And I've never seen that before at my pod. And it was 150 meters from my pod. They're doing this show. I'm glad they got it on video. They filmed it and they put it on Instagram.
That was something else I was thinking when we were watching your video. What do you do with waste? Like food, toilet, all that kind of stuff?
Well, best way of preventing waste is, of having to get rid of waste is preventing it in the first place. So when I have my meals pre-made, I only have, I use reusable containers, and I give them to the people that are making my foods, and then I have no waste.
Goes straight
from
back.
food. Yeah. For the toilets, I've spent so much time studying toilets. I couldn't even tell you. Trying to find the best way of having a toilet because the toilet experience on a boat is usually really bad. They usually smell. What do you do with the waste? So we've spent a lot of time trying to figure that out. We've experimented with incinerator toilets that incinerate the waste, and we have that solution. We developed it ourselves in-house. It actually diverted the liquids from the solids and then would incinerate the solids. But then you have a smell problem with, it vents the burnt poop smell out of a vent.
That smells like. I can imagine that.
Yeah, no, it's not good. You can filter that. You can fix that. But then you're still burning hydrocarbons, and we're trying to get away from having to use hydrocarbons as much as possible. So we have 3 other solutions for handling the waste. Well, a separate one before that is even eliminating toilet paper. So we're using smart toilets that have a sprayer to wash and then a dryer to dry. So it's a really nice experience. It beats the pants off of toilet paper. It's just a little bit of a shift in mindset to get used to it. But once you do, you don't want to go back. So that's a big thing. Get rid of the toilet paper. That's a big problem solved. Then there's a couple of other solutions that get rid of the waste in a very natural way. They use oxidation combined with some bacteria that is already there, and you have the system. It's about 1.3 meters diameter and about the same height, and that will treat pretty much whatever you can throw at it. For 2 or 3 people could throw everything they want at it for a normal household, and it'll treat it. And at the end, you have 95% clean water, which is clean enough to release, or you can put it through some additional filtering and even recycle it if you want to, but it's probably not what most people want to do. They don't want to recycle their toilet
Maybe
waste.
one day. So what's missing from it then, according to you?
I said that in my talk yesterday. The technology, we've solved all the technical issues. So everything's done. We just need to get the cost down. Because people ask, well, how much is it? About 1.2 to 1.5 million. That's what we would like to sell them for. Right now, they still cost about $6 million each.
Really?
Yeah. Well, they're prototypes. Like the first iPhone cost $1 billion, because there's a lot of research and development that went into developing all the technologies to make that. In production, the cost will go down a lot, but
is that just with scaling, with number of units, nothing else? Like the more you sell, the cheaper it can be.
The price will come down, but there's a limit, because if we're running on solar power, putting the power into batteries are quite expensive. For running a house, you need about $30,000 or $40,000 in batteries.
Really?
Yeah, but then you're off grid. Yeah, I think that's a pretty valuable thing to be off grid for power, for water. Maybe some part of the food can be off grid as well with hydroponics, and you have fish. You have lots of fish.
So and with have you sold any then, or is this purely as a prototype now?
We have a lot of pre-sales. We've taken like the Tesla kind of $100 deposits on your SeaPod just to put your name on the list, on the waiting list, and have your priority list done. But we haven't taken any orders with real money because we want to get the cost down before we commit to delivering up. I don't want to sign a contract saying we're going to deliver this for 1 point whatever million, and then it's going to cost us 3 times that amount.
But how do you get price down from 6 million to 1.2 then on something so unique as that, though?
We've been doing a lot of design work on how to redo all the parts in a way that can be produced in larger numbers and in a way that they snap together more like Lego. So the first ones cost so much because we didn't know what we're building exactly. We had a really good idea, but even if you have really good plans, the first time you're making something totally new that's never been done before, there's a lot of research and development and reworking, and it just turns into a big R&D project. So there's a lot of hand labor that goes into making these, and that's a lot of it's years and years of work. So now we have it down to we know exactly what we want. We know the finished product, and even our workers know now, because at the beginning, a lot of our workers didn't really understand what we were doing until we had the unit floating in the water. Then they're like, oh, okay, I get it now. And now the whole thing is complete, and it's much easier to make another one because we can bring experts in and they can see what the finished product should be like, and then we can iterate from there.
And so who are your customers then, if you don't mind me asking? I mean, like who is that person that wants to do what you're doing?
I think that, well, that's an interesting question. I think that everyone is a customer. They just don't know it yet.
That's something Joe Quirk would say, definitely.
Is it? Well, it's like I just heard this thing the other day that you can't build a product from doing like a focus group, because people don't necessarily know what they want until you've created it, and you're creating a whole new market. Like, people didn't know that they needed a smartphone in their pocket until you built it, or they didn't know that they needed a tablet computer until you built it. And then it's like, oh, well, this makes a lot of sense. People didn't know that they needed a home computer. IBM didn't think there was a market for it. And then they did it, and it's like, well, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. And now we have the most powerful computers in our phone, in our pockets. So I think once people experience this, like that, I'm spending a lot of time designing, like trying to figure out what the lifestyle is like. That's why I made that video, because I wanted to show people the vision for the lifestyle. And we're still at the beginning of that. I think it's getting better and better all the time. And I think once people experience the whole experience, then it's going to appeal to a lot of people.
Do you think, I mean, one thing that struck me was that there might be a lot of potential to site these things, just not in beautiful locations necessarily like where you're living, but off the coast of any city that's near water, for example, as a sort of slightly cheaper real estate option, because you see that in a lot of cities around the world, people living on barges. In London, where I live, there's plenty of people living on barges. But is that something you imagine? I mean, when you think about your business model over the next sort of 25 years, is it the kind of person living in the tropics, or might it be someone living off the coast of Barcelona or something? I don't know. The technology we've built
can be applied to a lot of different floating structures. What we have right now is kind of the most unusual looking, and it's the hardest thing to build, and it's gotten a lot of attention. But the next iterations of floating homes that we have under design are totally different, much easier to build, and can be scaled much larger. And they can be adjacent to cities on land. We have some governments we've spoken to that wanted to have like a matching floating city to their city on land.
Really?
Yeah. So I think in the future we're going to be there's going to be a lot of floating cities.
Well, I mean, when you see the evolution of a city, I mean, Dubai, somewhere like in the Emirates is a good example, because they can often, if a city's by the coast, it can only actually expand in sort of like 180 degrees, can't it? And then beyond a point, you don't want it to expand too far. So you're right. If you could expand the other 180 degrees, what are these like then? Are they? What are they? A bit more like Lego, joined together, pods on pods and stuff. Or are you talking about absolutely like city-looking structures? You know,
cities unlike anything we've seen before for cities, and they can be done in a way that is scalable. Because I've seen designs for floating cities that are just not realistic. I mean, they're these huge, massive structures that would cost billions of dollars, and that's just not something that's realistic anytime soon. So we have some designs, like what we've done with the SeaPod now is very realistic to build more, because it's just it's a lot of money, but it's not a lot compared to a home in Toronto right now, like where I'm from. You spend $1 million on a home and you don't get anything. It's just a tiny little house in a bad part of town for $1 million. Here you have $1 million and you have the most amazing views, incredible lifestyle, warm year round. So I think we have something that can offer cities a really good alternative.
Can you describe what they'll look like though? Is it at that stage the larger structures? Are they small structures that connect together, or is it a case of you're building a huge floating platform and then building stuff on top of it? I don't know.
Some things I don't want to talk about until we actually sign the agreements and then make a formal announcement, because I don't want to let the cat out of the bag, because it's a really cool bag.
Okay. Fair enough.
But some would be, I would say like a floating version of Venice, because Venice isn't actually floating. It looks kind of like it could be floating, but it's not. So we have an idea for a floating version of Venice.
Blimey. And what's the long-term plan here then? The reason I ask, and I hope you'll be able to give me an answer, is because you have to have a pretty good vision, or to be visionary, to even dream up what you're living in to start with.
Yeah.
So what's on the, what's like 50 years in the future then, according to you? Describe the scenario you hope to be in at that point.
Multiple floating cities of all kinds of variety that give us a new option on how to live on the planet. And I think by living on the water, it's going to open up new ways of living and also new respect for the ocean. Because right now, if there's a forest fire, people are really have a heightened concern for the forests and what's happening with the environment on land. But when similar things happen in the ocean, like coral bleaching, and the corals are dying, no one sees that, so they're not aware of it, and then that's a huge environmental issue. If you're living on the water, you're going to respect your home. So I think that's going to be really good for the oceans, and every home we actually are building becomes a marine habitat for life. And a lot of areas, people think that the ocean is filled with life. There's corals everywhere. There's fish, there's dolphins, there's sharks or whatever everywhere. But in reality, the ocean is pretty much like a desert once you get a few miles out. There's not much there. But every floating house that we build can be made into a habitat. And if you look at the videos from our underwater room, there's thousands of fish everywhere you look.
I think Joe called it coralcrete. Is that a word you know?
Yeah, coralcrete is a word. We actually developed a new technology we just installed a few weeks ago that does coralcrete. I don't generally call it coralcrete, but it basically pulls the calcium carbonate out of the water, and it pulls it onto the steel structure that we have, kind of like a magnet. It attracts it like a magnet, and that's kind of turning the whole steel structure into a seashell. And coral love calcium carbonate. That's the basis of their skeleton. Sea life loves it, so it becomes this ecosystem. And
does it help to stop the SeaPod,
from rusting?
Yeah.
That's the primary reason we do it. The benefit is, it becomes a marine habitat.
What's the life expectancy of a SeaPod then?
People are concerned about the rusting, and they think that's the biggest risk with the structure not lasting a long time. But like my SeaPod in the water, we've been testing one of those means of protecting the steel from rusting. And if you go at the water line, which would normally be very rusted on a steel structure, the steel is like brand new steel. It's like absolutely pristine. And the reason is because we're putting a small electric current through the steel, and we're not putting, if you put more current through, then you get the calcium being pulled to the steel effect. If you just put enough in, then it prevents the steel from rusting. So right? It looks like virgin steel.
Do boats use that already as a technology?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I was going to say, you must draw a lot of the ideas obviously come from boat tech.
Yeah, we're definitely starting. We started with boat technology because we're basically a boat, but we don't look like one. And then we're developing a lot of our own systems. Like we developed this system where it automatically adjusts to the salinity of the ocean, and I don't think that's used in normal steel protection systems. So we automatically adjust. We have a sensor that detects the salinity, and then we adjust the amount of current that's going through. And then we can tune it so we can put more, so we can have like neutral rusting effect or corrosion effect. So it's just neutral. We can turn it up to create this coralcrete, or we can turn it up even more and make more of it, or we can turn it just so it's just break even, and we're not going to create any, because sometimes you don't want to create too much because you don't want to become too heavy.
Yeah. As the other obvious question, buoyancy. I know it's a super buoyant structure, mm-hmm. but how much of a wave or sort of turbulence does it take to make it feel like you're on a boat?
I've been in 2.5 meter waves, and that gets to the point of not being comfortable. But it depends on the type of wave as well. So the location that I have my SeaPod in, there's about 3 months a year where it shouldn't be there because we get one direction of waves coming through, and that's where you get the movement. And there's maybe 3 or 4 days a month that are just not fun. You can be there, but you can't get a good night's sleep. So actually this year, we left it there last year because we wanted to test the conditions it can take. See, like throw stuff at it and see what it can take and see how it handles it. And handle it just fine. It's just not ideal for sleeping most of the time.
Do you think there's a technology that can resolve that?
Oh yeah, no. We need to actually design them for the location where we're putting them. So at that location, we should maybe make a few more tweaks on the next model that we make, and we already have the tweaks that we're going to build into the next version. So it would be fine to leave in that location, but like we have the other model that's in deep water, and that's a totally different structure because it needs to be a different structure for the wave conditions that are there.
And what kind of waves can that stand without?
Up to about 5 meters.
Really? And at 5 meters, is it unbearable, or at 5 meters do you start feeling the...
Well, at 5 meters, it can take it safely, but you wouldn't want to live in 5 meters conditions all the time. It's like we can design a structure that can be fine in those conditions 24/7, 365 days a year, but you probably don't want to live in that because it's not nice. Like if you want to go for a swim, you don't want to do it in 5 meter waves.
Is there a way to? I don't think when I was talking to Joe once, he told me about is it the kind of glass of wine test or something? If there's a glass of wine on the table and you can see it moving, then the waves are too big. Are there ways to engineer these things so that, I suppose, like a platform that like an oil platform, they don't move around much, do they? But they're floating.
Yeah. So we're using oil platform technology. Basically, we're a small version of an oil rig. So if we scale this up, we can make it as big as you want for more people or a bigger home and more stability. So that's what I said. We can basically tune it for the location that you want to put them.
So you would even scale your pod, the version you've got, up, literally 1 for 1, to a giant kind of 3-story version or a 2-story version? Or
you can. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you plan things like that? I mean,
well, of course.
Hotels come to mind immediately.
Yeah.
I mean, I would imagine that some of your first clients might be people creating Airbnbs or experiences, would you say? I don't know. I'm wondering who it is who... It's either someone who's done all right and wants a really quirky holiday home.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people are going to go, let's go and live like you. I don't know. Maybe you know a lot. Do you think there's a number of people that would want to go straight to living?
Yes. And once we give people the chance to stay there, like in an Airbnb or a hotel, then it's like a drug dealer. You give them a first taste of free, and then they're addicted, and then they want more.
I suppose that would... Have you got a plan to have a model that could be rented out? Because that would make sense, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, we can rent mine out. I don't like to leave.
I was going to say, didn't you auction it the other night?
I did. Yeah.
Oh, you did.
That was for charity. So.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good. Well, look, I'm in awe of it. I'll be honest with you. I'm not sure it's my thing. I would definitely come if there was an Airbnb. Obviously, I'd have to give it a go.
Yeah.
But what I really appreciate is the vision, because you must really believe in this stuff to go to these lengths to create these things, which, like you say, maybe people don't know they want them yet. You do. And ironically, you worked it out by living on a similar type scenario yourself. That's where you discovered the notion.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're right. Maybe you just need to you need to start injecting that drug into people.
Yeah. When people experience it, they love it. I don't think there's one of our employees doesn't like it. But that's about the only person I've ever seen that didn't like, wow, this is amazing. And
they're working in the wrong business by the sounds of it.
Yeah, it's a receptionist. Oddly enough.
Well, listen, Grant, thanks for coming in and talking and just revealing it all. I'm glad I got to speak to you in person, because I had so many questions I wanted to ask when I was watching that, but you've been very candid with your answers, and obviously best of luck.
Thank you.
And I'll watch it with a keen eye from now on.
All right.
Because I think it's by far the most interesting project it's actually something I forgot to ask you. Mm-hmm. Is there any ideological motivation here? As in, are you the kind of person that is thinking about the future when people want to live in free jurisdictions and off coast, 21 miles off the coast and stuff like that. Is that part of your drive, or is that just, it could be a nice side effect?
I've always loved to live on the water or close to the water or be swimming in water, and so that's my connection to it. I just love being around it. I've always been like that, and I think there's a lot of people that are drawn to us for different reasons. Some are for the freedom aspect, some are for the living on waters, and some people like the innovation that we're doing, the lifestyle that we're offering, to be able to have water sports and water toys that they are right on their home. There's a lot of artists that love what we're doing because it's just a great place to write a new song or come up with new ideas. So there's a lot of people that are interested in what we're doing for different reasons.
Yeah, I can see the many applications, and you're absolutely right. Well, anyway, thanks for sharing, and good luck with everything. And good luck. I'll tell your business partner good luck from me for his 120 days underwater. I don't think he needs the luck. If he's done that many already, I think he'll be absolutely fine.
Yeah, he's pretty happy down there.
He's probably not going to come out, mate, is he?
He said he might come up for the party and then go back down.
What party is that?
We're going to
have to celebrate him doing the
him.
120. Oh, we should do it down there, then it can keep going.
Yeah, maybe.
Great. Anyway, thanks for chatting, Grant. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks.